There are multiple ways to keep in touch with the Wolf Connection podcast. Through our Instagram handle, the Wolf Connection Pod. And for comments and questions, send us an email to podcast@wolfconnection.org with your comments, questions, and guest ideas for Stephen and myself. You may hear your question answered on an upcoming podcast. Thank you for your support, and howls to you all. Welcome to the Wolf Connection podcast. I'm your host, John Kalfa. Let's talk about some wolves. All right, a little bit on the earlier side, at least for Stephen and myself, but it's the mid-afternoon from our next guest. He comes to us from Ipswich, Massachusetts. He is the Facility and Program Director of Wolf Hollow. He is Zee Soffron. Zee, pleasure to meet you, sir. Thank you for reaching out. I know it was Vienna who reached out to the podcast, to Stephen and I wanted to get you guys on. So how are you doing over there in Massachusetts? How's everything going?
It's going great. It's actually, I am a school teacher as well, so I have today off, and luckily we actually got our first snow of the year, really, of any real accumulation. So the wolves are loving it. They're romping and playing outside. So had a snowball fight with my son, so it's been a great day.
That's awesome, man. That's the way to do it. And you've been there since the inception of the organization, which has now been around for 32 years, 10 years as the Facility and Program Director. And you're a school teacher, which is awesome. So how did you get involved in this organization? Because I looked at the website, I look at the beautiful wolves that you guys have and that you take care of. How did this winding road get you to this wonderful place?
Yeah, it's really a great question to start with. And I feel like I have a pretty unique story. Unlike most people, I think that working with wolves came to me instead of me, seeking it out. That is largely due to the fact that my dad was the founder. I was 14 when we got our first wolves in 1990 and it opened to the public. So to make your freshman year of high school more awkward, let's get wolves. So it's been an amazing 32-year experience, and just it's almost can't recognize the property, what we do from our start. So it's been wonderful to watch that over this time.
What's that like as a teenager? As you said, as we all know, teenage years can be awkward. They can be really sort of finding yourself, finding your niche, what that's all about, especially in high school. What was the calling for your dad to start the organization and for you then to sort of jump in and be almost his right-hand man when everything gets going?
So I had a very unique entrance into working with wolves, as I didn't necessarily seek it out. It was, kind of thrown upon me, as my dad was the founder. So again, to make your freshman year of high school even more awkward, let's get some wolves. But the inspiration, you could say, goes all the way back to the 1950s when my dad was, 10, 11. He was born into a very Greek family, and he was the second son. So everything was about his brother. So we think he felt misunderstood, underappreciated. Spent as much time as he could in nature. Ipswich is on the coast. We have beautiful beaches, state parks, lots of open space. So I think that's where he found his self-worth and found peace, for himself. Also in those days, I've met some old timers in town that would tell me that back in the 1950s, they'd be throwing popcorn at him at the John Wayne movies because he'd cheer for the natives and not the cowboys. So again, not a popular thing to do at that time. But long story short, by the late 70s, my dad had read everything he could about wolves, David Meach, etc.
Yeah.
And then, unfortunately, he was hit by a drunk driver in, I think it was 1983. While he was severely injured, multiple surgeries, and et cetera. Luckily, financially, we weren't in a dire position because my family had owned a shellfish company since the 1940s. So my uncle was involved, my cousin was involved. So that was, not in a bad spot. But obviously, a near-death experience caused him a lot of reflection. It completely changed our dynamic, father and son. I was probably only about 6 or 7, if that. So I think through that reflection, he said, what am I going to do with my life? And I think that, saw himself in the wolf as underappreciated, misunderstood. Also during that time, through his recovery, through both physical and mental recovery, he started taking some painting classes at a local art school. And when he got a chance to paint, what he wanted was always wolves. So that's when he started getting pushback. Why would you paint wolves? They're awful, they're vicious, they're nasty.
Wow.
So then this was really the first time, being outside of his own personal bubble, that he realized that that was very much still the stigma of wolves. So knowing there would eventually be a settlement from the accident, he started doing the homework, writing to the federal government, writing to other wolf facilities. He actually went out to Wolf Park in Battleground, Indiana, and spent, I think, about 2 or 3 weeks out there with Dr. Klinghammer to see really what was involved with starting Wolf Sanctuary. And then we got our nonprofit status in 1988 and opened with our first wolves in 1990.
So how'd the name come about? How did he come up with the name?
Actually, I love that question. I don't get asked that very often. I remember sitting at the dining room table with my dad when we knew it was a go. And, he had, been talking to, other nature people involved with wildlife, et cetera. And it was time to play the name game. So we were, at the dining room table one night, and so far the only thing we had from it was someone else's idea was Wolfland, and it was a hard no from me, even at 14, or 13. So and just the back of the property where the main wolf enclosure is kind of a natural stream-fed pond. It's kind of like a little, um, you know. Low space, whatnot. So kind of a hollow. So we came up with Wolf Hollow, and had a nice ring to it, and that was about it. We didn't really consider anything else after that. So
It's such an
kind of a reflection of the property itself.
yeah, and that's beautiful that you guys do that, and it's such a wild story that it's amazing the people that we talk to and how they get involved and how it all really comes about that you either get to work with wolves, that you photograph wolves, that you are rescuing wolves in your guys' case. What was that first rescue like for you guys? Because you get your status, you open up, and then you get your first rescue. Is there something that sticks in your mind about those first two wolves that came through your door and the learning experiences that you guys had?
Yeah, before I even answer that, I don't necessarily, or I shy away from calling ourselves a rescue,
Mm,
as that implies we're taking injured wolves and rehabbing them,
mm,
or again, wolves
Mm.
that are, predominantly in shelters, or when we do get wolves, they are from other federally licensed sanctuaries, zoos, etc.
mhm.
So
I
I
see.
don't know, but some people have, are picky about that
Sure,
delineation. So
that's fine. Yeah.
Sure.
yeah, so I'm comfortable with rescue, sanctuary, anything, but just for I guess full disclosure.
Yeah.
But to answer your question, when we got our first wolves, I had grown up with a German Shepherd. She was my best friend. From the time we got her when I was 5 till when she passed. It really wasn't that weird for me, as you'd think. It was definitely weird, but I. Knowing who my dad was, kind of watching the work he put into it, hundreds and hundreds of hours of writing letters. This is before email at the dining room table. It felt natural. It felt right. If I had to put into just a couple words. So I was excited. I never was afraid of dogs in general. Very comfortable with dogs. I had already been out to Wolf Park by this point for their week-long seminar, and had worked hands-on with the wolves there. So I felt very prepared and very curious, and yeah, all that.
So as the evolution happens for you, so what's your trajectory at this point? Because you told everybody initially, so you're also a teacher. So you're helping your dad in the beginning stages of this as you're a teenager. What's the path? Are you off to college? You get your teaching degree, come back. How are you balancing this for yourself in these early years until you really become the facility and program director? About 20 or so years in.
Yeah. So my earliest interactions were mostly just chores, whether it's getting food ready, helping prep food, filling water buckets, property maintenance, etc. At that age, I was going in with the wolves, on a regular basis at 14, with my dad by my side. And again, learned so much at Wolf Park that I could probably tell, but some of it's really just in you, that your reaction, your instincts, that you learn there. So So yeah, in those days it was pretty much, that if if the wolves were howling and my dad didn't like the type of howl, he'd send me out with a flashlight and make sure what was everything was okay. And that's really, a real wonderful thing is there's someone here 24/7, on property with them, and so I can look out my back windows and watch the whole enclosure. So it's pretty makes me feel safe for them. Um, and then again, after high school, I actually coincidentally went to the same art college that you could say somewhat inspired the creation of Wolf Hollow. I got my bachelor's degree in illustration. And then after college, I found a tattoo apprenticeship, actually. And then headed in that direction for a few years. And, even in college, while I wasn't maybe getting made fun of or picked on, like I was in high school for, having wolves, it was still very much that's the kid whose parents have the wolves. So again, it was still trying to find myself, and I think tattooing in the city is about as far away as you could get from working with wolves in Ipswich. I still lived on property, I still helped out, but I was trying to find my own path. And at this point, my father was well into Alzheimer's, and it was really my mother and one of our early volunteers, Christina, doing pretty much everything. So it was after my dad passed in 2001 that I started seeing the outpouring of letters, condolences. In addition to we're sorry for your loss, but what an amazing thing he created, and just really started seeing the impact that Wolf Hollow was having on people. It's hard to have that perspective when you live with them 24/7. So I started thinking, and I'm 24 at this point. We have something really magical and really special here. And a lot of people thought Wolf Hollow would end with my father's passing. For the first few years after that, it was pretty much 90% my mom and Christina and the volunteers. And then finally, I lost my taste for tattooing, and then ended up finding a middle school teaching job, which is perfect. The schedule works really well with doing this. I'm on property all weekend for the most part, working with the wolves. I see them before I leave for work, when I come home. So yeah, and it was really teaching that really helped me grow as a presenter. Up until that point, it was just doing the labor, the chores, helping vaccinate wolves, etc. So, and then really just working with kids, having those conversations. I absolutely love what I do, both at Wolf Hollow and also in the middle school classroom. So I feel really lucky.
So you were 14 when you started. I mean, I find that when I look back at at things I did when I was 14 that I still do now, the experience is so different, especially emotionally, like what you're able to tap into emotionally. I mean, I remember like the experiences of listening to music, for example, when I was 14 versus now. I was having, out of body experiences listening to music, just walking by myself with headphones on. And now it's still as meaningful to me now since I do it for a living, but it's totally different. So I'm just wondering, can you tap into how your relationship with wolves was distinctly different when you were 14 versus now being an adult? And I don't mean necessarily because you've had, decades or more of experience. I just mean emotionally, energetically. Can you distinguish? Is there a fundamental difference in your relationship then and now? Just the feeling of it.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's hard to look back, 30 years. Where was I at? Where was my head at?
I know. Yeah, it is.
So, but I think I always had an incredible amount of respect for them. Number one, I knew full well what they were, what they're capable of, and the risks, being involved. So I wouldn't say I was ever nervous or afraid, because you can't be when you're working with them. You have to be 100% on, 100% comfortable.
Of course.
But just really, I think the thing that has changed about me is just just the maturity, especially going from especially I would say 19 to 25, especially for men. And I think the wolves really made me in a lot of ways who I am as a person today. And this was also going on, this was the same years that I was watching my father lapse further into Alzheimer's. So they were kind of almost like a parental figure for me. Weeble especially, he was the wolf that we had from 2001 till 2013. And he definitely taught me a lot, in place of my father, about wolves, but also about respect, patience, humility. So I just I wouldn't say that I didn't have respect before, but just as a kid. But now it's just there's just something about these animals, and even after 32 years, every time I walk through that door, it's I have to remind myself that this is my real life.
Mm.
How about the way they reacted to you? Do you remember differences? I mean, 14 to now is a big difference, especially in you, like I was saying. But did they react to you differently? Was there more playful energy? I'm just curious how that span of time changes.
Yeah, so I think that their relationship changes more on kind of their growth and development. When they're pups all the way up until I'd say about 2.5, 3. Even though they're full grown, they're still very much juveniles. So at that point, they still want to climb all over you. They want to, steal from you. Tug at your
Yep.
bootlaces. As they get older, they get a little more aloof. We like to refer that the older wolves kind of see us as hotel art or restaurant art. Yeah, you're kind of there. They'll still come up. They love their belly rubs at any age. But it's just like humans. Kids are more energetic, more in your face than most adults.
I mean, give people to just to lay the land, because you spoke about looking at your back window and you're on the property and things like that. What is what's the atmosphere and what's the physical geography of really where you're situated, and the way that it's set up for you guys to be able to do what you do? Just give everybody just kind of an outline of what it's all, what it looks like
Of
of
the
the landscape.
landscape.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are. So I mean, well, zooming out a little bit, Ipswich is a coastal town about 35 miles north of Boston. We're kind of nestled in between Salem, Mass, and Newburyport, Mass, if anyone knows the geography. And then Ipswich is very much known for its open space, farmland. A lot of horse folks around here. So it's pretty picturesque. Our property actually sits on a pretty busy road, so it's just one lane each way, but it is a state highway, I guess technically. And then we have about 5 acres. We are on the smaller side. And then pretty much the front of the property is where our visitors enter. We just put up about 5 years ago, which is a great step for us. And then basically we have a little gathering area, picnic tables, etc. Our gathering area, we have informational boards, activity table featuring different canine skulls, some literature, and then just a nice hopefully make a nice greeting, welcoming atmosphere. I was in the hospitality industry, working in restaurants throughout college and even past, and I know how much that first impression is. And really over the years, and now especially with the ease to do online reviews, really want to make sure that we're giving a good impression and treating our visitors well. And that's actually one of the things. I always joke that when I want more anxiety in my life, I go online and look at our reviews. But I'm so proud that pretty much the three consistents are: the wolves are amazing, well cared for. The staff is really passionate and friendly, and it's a great family experience educationally. So it's those are probably the three things that I want to make sure we're always hitting, which it seems like we're doing. As far as when folks get here, we did recently through COVID move to a reservation only system, and that's actually been really nice for our visitors as well as our staff. We know what to expect. Before COVID, we were having too many people try and come, so attendance was an issue, at least as far as accommodating all the folks. The reservations have worked out great. In addition, for just throughout COVID, but now if folks are driving 2 hours away, they know where they're going to get to see a wolf. Yeah, I saw a lot of tears and sad kids. And we always try and accommodate. Try and squeeze a couple more in if they've come a long way. But the tours themselves, we have two main types of experiences. What we started doing before COVID, but really got us through COVID, was private tours. So one person will book, that time slot and bring up to a certain amount of visitors with them. And that seems to really be popular since we started it. Those usually sell out first. I think people really like that personal atmosphere, that personal experience. I would, myself included, I think a lot of folks are more willing to ask, questions in a smaller group in front of a larger group. So, and it's actually been great for kids, a little more movement based. As our wolves, we have 4 spaces that do have wolves. So it's, the kids aren't sitting on the bleachers for an hour being lectured at, essentially. So that's been a really nice thing for them as well. Our traditional program that we, again, did for our first, 30 years exclusively, the tours again being a new thing. It was what we call our presentation, and that consists of visitors sitting on bleachers, wooden bleachers, pretty nice, and then our presenters in with the wolves as well as with senior volunteer staff. We usually cover many aspects of wolf life, behavior issues, But the four things that we're consistently talking about are family structures, environmental benefits, conservation and conflict, forms of communication, and then we sprinkle some dog and coyote connections in there as well. Really, the main goal and is that people will leave here knowing more about wolves. And I can't repeat what my dad's words would have been. so, but he was, and this might have been part of the Alzheimer's coming on, and we didn't know it, but. There was a point where if you weren't here for the beginning of the lecture, he would close the gate and you couldn't come.
Yeah.
So that's how important the educational aspect was to him.
Yeah.
He was pretty hard line about that, and that's something that has been incredibly important for me to maintain. As it is my father's legacy, it has our name on it. The morals and ethics of working with animals, you have to be spot on all bases, and again, just that integrity, having our family name behind it, but also again the how rare it is that we get to do this. So we try and make sure that it's always an educational experience. People are ultimately creating new advocates. That's also one of our main goals. And I like to think that seeing wolves up close, seeing us safely work with them, and it's not a circus show. We're not doing tricks. The closest thing we do for a trick is we can instigate a scent roll with essential oils, etc. And that we use that to talk about why are dogs rolling things, why are wolves rolling things. So again, so we take the work very seriously, and hopefully I'm going to stop there.
No, it's fine. It's great. And again, you can keep talking as much as you want. That's the whole point, is to get to know everything that you guys do. I want to ask, what's it like in Massachusetts, at least from your perspective, in the way that people see wolves and understand their role, I guess, in the ecosystem, and how they're perceived. I know that, as you said, the education is a very big point for you, big point for you all there at Wolf Hollow. And we experience this too at Wolf Connection. We really want people to understand the whole scope about wolves, and try to dispel any myths or things that they may have learned or seen in books or fairy tales and movies and such like that. What's the general perspective that you see with the visitors that come to Wolf Hollow? What are they trying to get out of it? What are the things that maybe they bring in that you're trying to, again, we're not trying to change, some people are trying to change minds, but what's the most of the idea that people have of wolves when they come here?
Yeah, that's been something that's been really cool to see, change over the last 30 years. When we first started, we would start every lecture with, asking the visitors to raise a show of hands of who thought wolves were a danger to people. And in 1990, it was 90% of our visitors. And, we stopped asking that question 10 years ago because no one really raised
Wow.
their hand anymore. And that's, again, there's so much more information, people just know so much more, and really demystified them, which is great. So that's been a great thing, is to see that, the public's perception do almost a 180, again, in favor of wolves, realizing their environmental benefits, etc. So that's been a great thing. Also, I got to say that kids are a lot smarter than my generation. Again, 15 years ago, I'd get a lot of what would win in a fight, a wolf or a monkey. And then today, or these days, I should say, we had an 8-year-old girl, within the last couple months. She raised her hand and she says, yes, she has to present her way. I want to go back to biomes or trophic cascades, or just busting out these like amazing vocab words. So that's really awesome to see. Kids knowing so much more, and with that knowledge, I totally believe that brings passion as well. I see it with my students. I'm the art teacher, and so many kids walk in my door afraid of art in 6th grade, and my first few lessons are designed to show them that you can do this. So it's just some. It makes me very hopeful, seeing where kids are at. And I think a lot of times we give the younger generation a bad rap. And then also it's really, I just think the overall curiosity from families has changed in a way too. I think, and from my perspective at least, I think when a lot of people, first came, it was more of almost a fearful curiosity. Today, it seems like a lot of families have done their homework a little bit. It seems like the parents have prepped their kids, or they've gone on the website and they know the names of the wolves. So it's really nice to see that education, or that education, but also engagement. Even before they get here.
So you mentioned trophic cascades and some other wild wolf related concepts. I mean, how much of your educational approach do you think is dedicated to wolves in the wild?
Yeah, I would say for using my hour give or take by a few minutes long lecture, cut out probably 15 minutes of that is questions. I take breaks throughout just to so people aren't just being talked at for a straight hour. Keeps the kids engaged as well. But I would say of the actual time I spend lecturing, I would say um, 50 to probably 65% is about wolves in the wild, whether it's environmental benefits, family structures, communication, conflict as well. As wild wolves, are we have the ranching issue, so that does involve wild wolves too. So I would say, yeah, I would say close to 60% at least would be pretty much dedicated to that information.
And is there any prevalence of wolf or wolf dog ownership in Massachusetts in the surrounding area? Is that something that you guys are trying to educate individuals about that come here also? How much of that are you guys sort of tapping into?
Absolutely, yeah, that is a big part of what we do as well. And we do have currently we have one wolf dog hybrid on property. Her name is Gaia, and she is one of two wolf dog hybrids that we've had over the course of our 30 plus years. Sadly, we've conservatively gotten over 20,000 requests in 30 years to take wolf dog hybrids. The only time we consider it is if we do have a wolf that would otherwise be by itself, and that hybrid could be a suitable companion for that wolf. So that is how we got Gaia. She came in December of 2019 to be a companion for Scully, who is turning 5 years old. I don't know exactly how old she is, but we figure she's around the same age, as Scully had to be separated from his brother and sister after a serious fight between the boys. In addition to just being a companion for Scully, she's an amazing ambassador for Wolf Dog hybrids. And I don't want anybody to get the wrong impression that we're promoting wolf dog hybrids. We're 110% against wolf dog hybrids being owned in domestic situations. Just the numbers are pretty obvious that it's not a safe situation. The animals are usually, in poor conditions, or not, at least at the very least, not appropriate. I know there's some success stories out there, but they are far majority are they're the far minority, I should say. But Gaia is a wonderful ambassador. And when people see her and we say, this is not an animal you want in your house, and too many people do it. Yeah, she's beautiful. Yeah, she acts like a dog in some ways, but these are the reasons why you don't want a wolf dog hybrid. So it's great to do that as well, because when people see us, getting kisses or scratching a wolf's belly, the last thing I want them to do is think a wolf is a pet as well.
Yeah, that's a lot. Some of that is are the issues that we find too. That people come on our tours, they come to the property, and there's always an individual or two that are wondering about how to obtain. And there's this wildness about an exotic animal, whether it be a wolf or a tiger or a snake or whatever it may be. It just seems that there's something that people feel the need to have this connection with whatever that animal. And a lot of times we see that relationship with wolves and dogs is because they come from, dogs come from wolves, and so they feel that there's this bond and there's kinship there. And there is, as you've explained through your own experiences, that people feel that there's a need or a yearning to have this animal close to us in some way. I didn't ask this yet, but what's the current population or current population? How many wolves do you guys currently have at the residence, and how many can you hold at capacity? Because obviously, as we know, as sanctuaries, rescues, whatever we may be, we're always getting inquiries, as you just said. So what's the capacity right now for you guys?
Yeah, our current headcount is 10. That consists of 9 pure wolves and Gaia as well, wolf dog hybrid. And she is, I think, around 86% wolf. The shelter that she came from did perform a DNA test. So I believe that was the result. So as far as our setup, our main enclosure is around an acre in size. And in that space, we currently have our main pack, and that space is where all wolves at Wolf Hollow will start, is in the main enclosure. And currently in that space, we have a brother and sister pair, Kintaka and Aquila, who are turning 5 years old in May. And they are the adoptive parents to 3 Arctic wolf pups who are just around 8.5 months old. who are Scotty, Togo, and Vilcus. Then we have in our auxiliary spaces, we have Linnea and Argus in one space, and then their brother Grendel in a separate, and they will all turn 12 this coming spring. And then again in our last space is Scully and Gaia. Scully is brother to Kintaka and Aquila, and Gaia his wolf dog hybrid companion.
I always like to ask this too because we have this situation come up a lot. Do you all come up with the names of the wolves? Do they come with those names? What's if there is any sort of naming process? Because we get this question also, is do they come with the name? And most of the time, at least for us, they come with the name, and if it sticks, we're like, yep, we'll deal with this. But there are some that come with, I think Ranger actually came with Fido or something like that. It was, I mean, but anyways, that's, what's the process for you guys with whenever that comes up?
Yeah. So, again, it's such a small part of working with these guys.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
you can see my face is lighting up just thinking about the name game. So that's always a fun part. So, yeah, all kinds of ways we come up with names. For Grendel, I personally named him after, the antagonist in Beowulf, after reading an alternate version of that story titled Grendel. So I thought, what a great metaphor, that misunderstood monster in the woods. So that's where I got Grendel. My wife named Linnea. As story goes, is I was doing a backpacking tour across Europe, and she came to visit me for a week while I was in one place for a little while, and she was on a layover in Iceland and heard this really intelligent, well-spoken little girl, and just apparently overheard her name being called Linnea. So, and it just always stuck with her. So that's probably the most random. Let's see. Argus was named by a former volunteer after the Greek mythological creature. Apparently represents watchful or protector. Let's see. Kintaka was named by our director of veterinary medicine, Dr. Lori Gordon. Aquila and Togo were both named by our volunteer staff. So every time we get puppies, we'll invite the volunteers to make submissions. Then we narrow that down to about 5 finalists, and then they have a secret vote. So that's a really nice thing to offer them. And then Gaia is the only one that came named. So Gaia came named Gaia, which is beautiful name for her. She's such a sweet, energetic, just bright-eyed girl. And then probably the funniest story is how we got the name Scully for a wolf. When we got Scully and his siblings in 2018, my son's 6.5. So, of course, you're going to let your son name a wolf. And at that time, we did a lot of Lego and Playmobil, and our go-to was pirate theme. So that's how we got a wolf named Scully. so yeah. Probably the most meaningful names we've ever had are also kind of the strangest. That would be Weeble and Jelly. And they were actually the last 2 wolves that my dad named just a couple months before he passed in the depths of Alzheimer's. So we were visiting him one day in hospice, and he was staring me down like I was a stranger. So finally, my mom asked, who's that? And he's like, it's a guy. She's like, okay, well, what's his name? And he says, Weeble. So like, okay, and then later that visit, he was reminiscing about one of our former, quote, alpha females. I know, that the term alpha has its own issues, but he was, reminiscing about the alpha female. We'd only ever had one at that point. So whenever we'd say her name, he would just get annoyed and shake his head. So we said, okay, well, what was her name? And he said, Jelly. So my mother and I decided if we, the next wolves we got, if we were to continue Wolf Hollow, would be Weeble and Jelly. So.
Wow. What is it like family wise for you? Because this started obviously with your father and mother, and now your family's in this world. What's it been like for your wife, your son now to be indoctrinated into this situation, and how is that formulating his very early years and seeing what his father and the people around him are doing?
Yeah. Something I think about, a lot is, obviously, in addition to all the other daily issues you have when you go to bed at night, it's that's a big part of it too, is, kind of that family aspect. As far as my wife and son's involvement, my wife does do some of the bookkeeping and reservations for us as well. She's she does have a business degree, and she's also a vet tech. So I mean, man, if I couldn't have put a better combo together for the person that would be by my side here. And she doesn't really interact with the wolves on a daily basis, but she is very involved. She helps with vaccinations, being a vet tech. If someone's not looking, she's on property. So again, she does care for these guys quite a bit, and is my go-to a lot of times. For that stuff. Quick question before I, bother Dr. Lori. As far as her involvement as well, or her other interests, she is a vet tech and at a local animal hospital, or a pretty large one actually. And then she also was involved with animal rescue. She volunteers at a dog and cat rescue nearby. So she keeps herself busy. So absolutely. And then as far as my son, that's been really interesting to watch for a couple of reasons. My first concern, when he was, going into kindergarten, first grade, because the amount of what he sees, it's not uncommon for him to walk out to get on the bus in the morning and there's a roadkill deer in the driveway. So my first question at parent teacher night is my kid normal? So just want to make sure that, that exposure is, not sending him down any dark paths. So I said, he's perfectly fine. He's healthy, he's bright, he's funny. So, and he's very caring. And then my other concern was, as he gets older, is he going to get, bullied like I did? So it was a pretty fun experience when I think it was his first grade open house. And I was in the classroom. He was next to me. We were talking to his teacher, and coincidentally, about a week before, a local magazine did a feature on us, and my mother, myself, and my son and I were on the cover. So this little girl is dragging her mom over to where I'm talking with the teacher and Otto, and she drags her mom over. She's pointing at Otto. She's like, "Mommy, that's the famous kid." So I said, "I got bullied, so he can be the famous kid." Normally, I'd shoo that, but but it's been funny because it's only in the last couple of years, he's about 10 now, probably the last 2 or 3 years, that I think it dawned on him that not everybody has wolves, behind the house. So he's definitely, it's not like a woe thing. I think it's just his normalcy. So, and, as far as his aspirations, people often ask me, my students, do you want your son to be an artist, or, do you want your son to do wolf stuff? I want him to be happy. And that's, number one priority. Whatever path he takes in life, whoever he decides to be, who to be with, we will support him 110%. And, luckily, when my dad passed, it was, it kind of, swept the rug out from everybody, because, we knew the Alzheimer's was coming, but, we were only around for, barely 10 years at that point. We weren't very well established. We were still figuring it out ourselves. So I think that, whatever happens in the future, Wolf Hollow, isn't a great place to move forward, whether it's Soffron at the helm or not.
That's incredible to hear. And it's amazing that shift that happens personally, right? Where we look at our own experience and we wonder how it's going to affect the next generation, or whether it's, our volunteers, our staff, our sons and daughters and things, and just to see how the world has shifted in that short period of time. And that's wonderful to see. I want to get back just quickly to the I guess the day to day, because we've had a couple of other places on. And what's the food situation like? Because you were talking about your son getting on the bus and there's a roadkill deal there. What's the how is it that Wolf Hollow continues to feed the pack and do all these things? Is it donation based? How are you guys handling that situation being on the East Coast?
The way we make everything happen is just through the incredible support of our visitors, our membership, our private donors, just our fans on social media. It's and that's an incredibly gratifying thing, is just see how many people connect with wolves and how much joy they bring to people, in so many ways. So as far as the food specifically is, we get Nebraska brand shipped out about 4 or 5 times a year. We'll get 50 cases. We have a dedicated freezer room in the basement, so we'll fill the freezers with that, and that is pretty much our go-to. And then from November till about March, sprinkled throughout the rest of the year, but we call November till March our roadkill deer season, because we are getting, I would say, on average, 1 to 2 roadkill deer dropped off every week by mass environmental police, local animal control, etc. So that's a great resource. Good use of the deer, not going to waste. Great for the wolves, both nutrition but also the enrichment. As they get to kind of compete over who gets the best parts, etc. And then lastly, I do like to mention a couple local businesses/organizations that are very good to us. In the Northeast, we have the group called Trustees of Reservations, and they own and maintain many historic properties. And about 4 miles away, there's a property called Appleton Farm, and they do have a meat share there. So when their members don't pick up their, grass-fed, organic, locally raised meats, they'll throw it in the freezer. And there's also a grocery store in Gloucester, Mass, called Common Crow that will do the same. So the wolves here on a fairly regular basis are getting, $50, organic steaks. Yeah, so they eat very well. So that's the majority. Both enrichment and also, other fun reasons is summertime. They do get, some watermelon on a hot day. We did see on the Voyagers Wolf Project that they documented wolf pups eating blueberries. So we introduced that a couple years ago. So obviously that's not sustaining them, but, they get lots of fun stuff. We often do get the question if we do give the wolves any live prey. Number one, that is illegal for us to do in Massachusetts. I don't know if that's similar across the country. Personally, even if we were allowed to do that, I wouldn't. There's nothing fun about putting an animal in that situation. So the wolves do hunt. It's in their enclosure. Rodents, frogs from the pond. Kintaka loves to wade through the pond in the summer and catch fish. And I've actually probably the most impressive things I've pulled out of the wolf enclosures is in the last 2 years I've pulled out 3 deceased red-tailed hawks, and then in 2012 a fisher cat. So
wow. I mean, that's what happens with our guys too. I mean, not taking out hawks, but scrub jays and gophers and stuff like that. If I guess they dig up in the wrong spot, you got to watch out.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are.
We actually, in front of a lecture with about 120 people back about 12 years ago, our female Nina watched a bird fly from a tree to the bleachers, to the roofing, and on its third or fourth pass, she jumped about 6 feet in the air and snatched it out of the sky. So that was pretty amazing for our visitors. Not amazing for the bird, but
Yeah, that's wild. That's crazy. What's the future look like for you guys, Z? Is there expansion coming? Are you sort of locked in land wise? It really seems that you've adapted and evolved, which is great. I mean, we've seen that with COVID and the pandemic, and how people have started to shift their focuses and how they've sometimes, obviously, there have been some positive things that have come out of this. Obviously, we all know about the negative, but what are some of the things moving forward for Wolf Hollow that you're excited about, that you guys are looking to do in terms of expansion, or just redirecting maybe some of the resources?
yeah, something that we constantly on our minds here is what's the next step. Not that we're in any rush, it's we got here over the course of 30 years. Everything is a process. Good things take time. But as to your point, land wise, we are pretty much locked in. There's really 2 issues that prevent us from expanding anytime soon past our 5 acres. That is, we're surrounded by a lot of wetlands, and then also abutting our property is a 30-year easement on some farmland. So I don't know if that's locked in. So, but that is something that is on our future horizon, is establishing a fund so that at one point we could make some kind of an offer for that. The wolves have a pretty good habitat, in my opinion. The main enclosure is beautiful. The rest of the enclosures, align with AZA recommendations for, space allowances. So, but, always, putting the wolves first and foremost, their happiness, their comfort, just their accommodations is really always a thing. So any way we could improve that is a definite hope. One thing that we've really COVID kind of put the brakes on it, but going into COVID and now just kind of getting back out of it, officially for the last year, is I would like to maybe try and develop more partnerships with schools, colleges. Again, with the amount of learning institutions in the Boston area, we could be such a great resource for, aspiring wildlife enthusiasts, or I should say, biologists, researchers, even anybody wanting to work with animals and in any capacity. So that would be fun to explore, and that comes from my love of education in general. Just to see, in an hour span, completely change someone's mind about wolves here at Wolf Hollow, or seeing that light bulb go off in one of my students' heads in the classroom. It's I've just gotten more and more passionate about education as I get older. So I think there would be a great possibility for that. We had our first summer intern this summer through my old school, so it was a more art related internship, but that kind of gives me the little bit of an experience and a taste of what that might look like, so we can maybe start developing that a bit more. And really just staying current, developing our message. And and I think one of the big things that I've seen really take off in the last few years that I would like to see grow more and more is just the ownership that our volunteer staff has taken on. 5 years ago, I would be doing a 1 hour lecture Saturday and Sunday. If it was a busy day, we'd add a second lecture. Chores from 8 in the morning till about 4 or 5 at night. And it was hard to let go of a lot of that. You want to make sure everything's being done, to the best standards. So having a volunteer base that we trust, we know they're more than competent, incredibly reliable, passionate about the wolves. So it's been really cool to see how much letting go a little bit and letting others take on more responsibility has grown us in ways that I could never do by myself, or with the small circle that we used to have. So
That's great. That's wonderful to hear that you guys are, again, expanding even in the space that you have, and that the mission stays the same, but you're always looking to grow, and that's wonderful to hear. Two more things before we let you go. Just where can people find Wolf Hollow? Website, social media, things like that, if they want to book a tour, if they want to go and see these beautiful animals, see the staff, and meet you guys, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you all?
yeah, so our website is www.wolfhollowipswich.org. And I know I sounded like a boomer saying the www. So we do have Facebook and Instagram. I think you'd find either of those, either a quick Wolf Hollow or Wolf Hollow Ipswich search. And actually, thanks to Vienna, we now have a TikTok. That was something I was very much trying to stay away from. But she has been amazing as our social media person, our, coordinator for collaborations like we are doing right now. So again, got to kind of let go of some of my fears and let those people that know that realm best do it. So, and she's been amazing and that, and as well as all of our staff here. I'm so blessed and impressed by the passion, the commitment, the quality of people that are involved with what we do here.
No, it's you got some wonderful people there, and again, it's thank Vienna. I've thanked her through email, but it's great that she reached out to us, and then we got a chance to speak with you and get to know more about Wolf Hollow, and that we can help the organizations any way that we can. My last question for you, Z, is when you hear the word wolf, what is the thing that comes to your mind?
Oh man, I have purposely not listened to the podcast for the last week, so I so it would be original. And I've checked out quite a few episodes by now, and I don't think I've heard this one yet, but I was somewhat prepared. I say majesty, and I say that specifically over majestic, just because of and again, people see wolves in so many ways. Some of them are a little bit out there, but when I say majesty, it's the personal connection, what they remind us of in ourselves, and also just their incredible importance, to have out there in the landscape. So, and majestic is more rainbows and puffy clouds. So trying to go a more kind of grounded and powerful approach there. But there's these guys are truly amazing, and it's I consider a real privilege to have this life. Actually, if one of my a fun story is, it was going back about 10 years ago, And, I was probably going on and on. I can talk about wolves all day pretty easily. But about, getting towards the end of an hour, a little boy raised his hand in the crowd, and I called on him, and he goes, yeah, how much longer are you going to keep talking about wolves? And, the crowd was horrified. His poor parents, were shocked. And it wasn't canned. It wasn't a canned response. I wasn't prepared for that. And I just said, if it means I save one wolf in the wild, I will stand here and talk till the day I die. And there was, a round of applause from the crowd, and knowing again, not wanting to shame that kid or that parent, I didn't want that to sound confrontational. And I said, this is why I love working with middle schoolers. They're completely honest, and I'm sure he just said what a lot of you are thinking. So we wrapped it up. So, but again, it was a pretty powerful moment, and it's I feel blessed. So.
Yeah, it's beautiful what you bring to it as a teacher and your journey, and your family is doing something wonderful out there in Massachusetts, and hopefully Stephen and I can make it back east at some point and visit you guys, and we'd love to see what it's all about, and any way that we can help, obviously we're here for you guys, and we're a voice. So Zee,
it'd be awesome. I'd love to show you around the area. We got beaches and some fun restaurants, and yeah, good time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I just share one more story?
Yeah, absolutely, go for it.
Awesome. So there's also two stories about the work we do that I just want to also throw in there, because I think it, doing this work, is, are the hours, the labor, the tears, the blood, getting covered in wolf poop, is it worth it? Are we having an impact? So there's two stories, both from within the last, few years. One just from the symposium a couple months ago, but quite a few years ago, we had a visitor. He came by himself. He was a gentleman in his probably 40s or 50s, and he definitely, had the hunter look, and that's one of the things we're really careful. We're not bashing sustenance hunting. I bring in that my dad was a deer hunter. I grew up eating that deer meat. So, and very conscious of the fact that we're trying to embrace the other side, not alienate them. So that's really important in our conversation as well. But because he had the look, one of our volunteers, she went up to him after and said, well, what'd you think of the program, sir? And he looked at her and he said, well, I'll be completely honest from you. I'm from New Hampshire. I've gone out to the Yellowstone area. I've killed wolves in my lifetime. After coming here today and learning what I did about them, their environmental impact, their family dynamics, I think I'm going to stop doing that and tell my friends what I learned here today. And, when we heard that story, we had a collective high five after, because that's exactly who we need to reach. And then more recently at the symposium, we had about, I think, 5 or 6 volunteers out there, and they were having breakfast one morning, and they were talking to one of the presenters who she had studied wolves in Isle Royale, and most recently, I believe, Yellowstone area. So somehow they were, at the same breakfast table, and Massachusetts came up. So she got all giddy and asked, "Are you guys from Wolf Hollow?" And one of our volunteers replied, "Yes, we are." And she says, "That's where I got my passion of wolves when I was a teenager in the 90s. So to know that we started that ripple effect for someone who is now presenting at the symposium is pretty amazing.
That's incredible. That's the way to do it. I mean, it's all organic, it's all free flowing, and it's once you start something, it spider webs out from that, and people are affected that you may never, that you ultimately see at symposiums and that are big time biologists, down the line. And so,
yeah, then we'll never know the ripple effects of what we do. So it's, I'm hopeful that there's a lot more than those two, but yeah.
Oh yeah, 100%. You guys are doing great work. Zee, it's a pleasure to meet you finally and to get to know you guys, and we'll be in touch sooner than later, but thank you for joining Stephen and I. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
This was awesome, guys. You were a lot of fun, and so it was great to hang out.
Yeah, absolutely. Howls to you guys out there, and we'll be with you next time.
Actually, the wolves are howling right now. Perfect timing.
That's perfect. I heard them. That is terrific. Way to sign off the podcast. Thanks, Wolves. Bye, everybody. Looking to support Wolf Connection or sponsor one of the wolves in our pack? Just go to wolfconnection.org, click on the Donate tab, and find out more information.